everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite kinks, abrasion play. And this gets overlooked so often, but it shouldn't, because it is so good for so many different types of kinksters. If you are a hardcore sadomasochist, if you are a hard to please brat, a hard to tame brat, a service submissive, even a pet player, even if you are a general, light, sensation play loving person who just wants some new novel scene ideas, abrasion play and this video are probably going to have a few surprises for you. So we're going to talk about what abrasion play is, how to get started with it, lots of scene ideas and more, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, what exactly is abrasion play? So abrasion play is a type of BDSM activity where you stimulate the skin by either rubbing it, scratching it, poking at it, pinching it, and generally abrading the surface of the skin. Scratching is by far the most popular and most common way of doing this, and this would contrast with more typical things like impact play or general pain play, which is more commonly done by striking the surface of the skin with either an implement or with a bare hand. Now, you might be wondering, okay, so abrasion play, you just rub the surface of the skin over and over and that's what counts as a kink now? Like, why would someone be into this? And well, think about it for a second. Have you ever used a body scrub a little bit too hard for too long, more than the directions said to do because it just felt so good and you couldn't stop? Or maybe you're the type of person where when you get a back scratch, you want someone to really get in there, or you want them to last for 2+ hours until your back is just like the color of raw salmon. Like, you want really intense, continual stimulus with your back scratching. And if that's you, I think you already understand why people enjoy abrasion play, and you might even already be doing it for yourself. And lots of other people also enjoy abrasion play if you're somebody who is into, say, tickling, biting, or scratching with claws. Abrasion play is likely to be right up your alley. And it might surprise you to know that even though it sounds fairly intense, I do think it is a good introduction to pain play for beginners because of the size of spectrum it's on. Like, when you go on Google and you look for ideas for abrasion play, most of the time what you're going to see is going to be sandpaper and steel wool. And to be clear, people do use those things for abrasion play, but it's not the be-all end-all. And as I've said, it's on a spectrum, just like any other kink is, and you can do it in a lighter and more gentle fashion. A lot of people, for example, will do abrasion play using things like dry body brushes, or hair brushes, or paint brushes, or gardening equipment, or gardening gloves, or textured gloves, or denim, or carpet. The list really goes on. There's tons of options for this. And if you do want to do things on a more intense level, there's also variety. Yes, there is sandpaper and steel wool. There's also wire brushes. There's also special gloves they make that are covered in chips, basically, that can be so intense and so wonderful. And you can even use just full-on pumice stones if you want to. The bath and body aisle, even at a grocery store, will give you lots of options for this if you want to DIY it. But when you're doing an abrasion play scene, it's a little bit different than maybe what you might do for a typical impact play scene. What you want to do with abrasion play is typically you want to introduce the sensation very slowly over the surface of the skin. And you want to go over and over and over again. Now, because you are slowly ramping up the sensation, and because you're not like striking the skin with an implement, it actually works fairly well basically anywhere you want to on the body. Unlike with something maybe like a paddle, where you really have to stick to maybe 3 or 4 areas, you can do this on the thighs, the calves, the buttocks, the back, the upper arm, the chest, the stomach. Almost anywhere you want to do this, you can maybe make abrasion play work. So doing this anywhere you want to on the skin. The idea is to slowly go over the same spot over and over and over again, gently increasing the sensation as you do so. You want to have something where you're going against the grain of what a lot of people will say like feels good for other forms of impact play. Like, yes, you are going very slowly with the warm-up, and typically you're not trying to avoid hitting the same spot. Going over the same spot over and over and over again is what helps produce this sensation that you want. And this combination of factors, the blood coming up to the surface of the skin, the repetitive same spot, it's slowly getting more intense over time, can produce a really wonderful endorphin rush, which if you want to experience subspace, that's a pretty good way to do it. Now, if you're nervous about trying out this kind of play, even hearing how the scene typically would go, what I would recommend is adding this on to the end of another scene or activity that you already really enjoy. Like, let's say you're doing a really full body massage, and then at the end, you pull out some body scrub and you use that and you just go over maybe the calves or the back, and you go again a little bit harder, a little faster than maybe you would if you were just doing it to actually have skincare benefits from it, but taking it more in a scene direction where it can stay very gentle and light if you want to, but you can make it more intense if you want the scene to go in that direction. You could also use something like a dry body brush or your own fingers or nails if you want to. Again, you can have it stay really gentle if you want it to, and then slowly make it more intense over time as you become more comfortable. Now, as I've already said, abrasion play can be a scene on its own, but a lot of folks do enjoy using it as more part of the warm-up period for another more traditional impact play scene. Like I said, abrasion play can help bring that blood to the surface of the skin, which is what people will typically do if all they're doing for abrasion is just the warm-up. This will typically be a little bit more rough and ready, a little bit quicker, a little bit harsher, with that same intention to get that blood up there and start to abrade the surface of the skin and maybe sort of irritate it a little bit. Making the skin sensitized will then make any sensation afterwards feel a lot more intense, whether that be just blowing on the skin, using a feather tickler, or something like wax play or electro play. All those are popular overlap options. Naturally, this makes it a really good pairing for brats that maybe aren't typically impressed by an impact play scene. It can be very humbling for a hardcore masochist or a brat to have somebody rub their skin over and over again with a scratchy surface, and then suddenly they can't take nearly the type of paddling they could if they were just doing a regular warm-up in a regular scene. Since abrasion play can completely get rid of your typical tolerances. But maybe you're not a brat or even that hardcore of a masochist, but you found that over time you just don't bruise or mark the way you used to. And so if what you're looking for is marks and bruises, I think this pairs really well with superficial light impact play, like light canes or a light wooden paddle. But going back to brats for a second, I want to talk about abrasion play with brats because I think it has a lot of potential as a punishment tool. Stop me if you've had this thought before, but a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, I am trying to get my brat or my sub to listen to my rules, and I gave them a spanking, but they liked the spanking, and so now they're doing it more, and so, oh my gosh, how do I maintain my DS relationship while also giving my partner the impact play they want, but not too much at the wrong time? And I want them to actually obey the rules, and I want to be able to actually modify their behavior and have them respect me. What do I do? And that is a complicated problem, to be sure, but abrasion play is so different from other forms of sensation and pain that I think it's worth exploring if you want to have something be a physical punishment. I personally don't necessarily recommend physical punishments for the reason given here, and also for many others. I've talked about this in videos previously, more down below if you want to hear about that. But if you do want to have physical discipline in your relationship, abrasion play might be a good way to go. And yes, there will always be masochists out there that love every single kind of pain and don't care where it comes from. However, that's not true for, I would say, most masochists, and definitely not most bottoms. So I would say typically most bottoms have some kind of a preference broadly between stingy and thuddy. And I would say that abrasion play is more similar to stingy. So if your partner prefers that, maybe not a good punishment choice. But if they're more into deep, thuddy, heavy tissue impact play, punishment here with abrasion might actually work. But your mileage will definitely vary on that because every single person is totally different. And not to mention, if you're long distance, abrasion play is a lot easier to tell a partner to do to themselves and have it feel more similar to what you would do to them versus telling someone to flog themselves or paddle themselves. Trust me, I've tried on both of those. Now, maybe you're not looking for ways to reinforce a dynamic, but you still like playing with punishment. You like the role play of punishment. You like punishments. You like good old-fashioned discipline, and that's where your kink is at. And also, surprise, surprise, I do think abrasion play works well for that too. Maybe you're really into over-the-knee spankings with a bath brush. Well, you've already got an abrasion tool built right in there. At the start of your scene, just flip it over and give them a really good rub down with the bristle part before flipping it over to use the wooden side. And that'll be a great introduction into abrasion play. But there's one big area of abrasion play that is actually a very old school traditional form of punishment, and that would be birching. So birching uses essentially what it sounds like, a bundle of twigs, usually from a birch tree or something similar, all wrapped together and then used over bare buttocks. And it is supposedly quite intense. What is interesting though as well is when you look up photos online for this, the birching horse that would have been used at the time would not entirely be out of place in a modern dungeon. Now, if that sounds too intense for you and you don't want to go out and like ruin your garden by collecting sticks, you can also use something like a bath broom, which can be used in a similar way, but because it is soaked in water first, will produce gentler results. And if you like the sound of a spa treatment with your BDSM play, I think look no further than a Korean body scrub. And if you don't know what these are yet, and you have not had the pleasure of having one, as I have had, they are the most intense body scrub you could possibly have, but they're also very simple to do in terms of the materials. You can easily buy what you need for this online from Amazon. Just make sure when you're doing it that the skin stays warm and stays wet, and also that you are using soap beforehand and not like a shower gel, because it can mess up the slip on the skin and then means you can't do this properly. This does require some advanced planning, and you do also have to be wet the whole time. So this is not really a good one for the dungeon, but if you're at home, it might be pretty fun, and also you get the wonderful skincare benefits afterwards. Also, I do think that if you are a service sub and you have maybe a dominant masochist or just a dom who enjoys more intense sensation, this can be a really good choice for you to do. But abrasion play doesn't have to be tied to just sensation play or impact play. It can also come from bondage. I personally discovered abrasion play with coconut rope, which is still one of my favorite forms of bondage to this day. And coconut rope is really freaking scratchy. And if you are in a switch dynamic or you're both masochists, it's really fun to play with because when you're using it for bondage and you're holding it as a top, it's also scratching you too. So if you don't want that, be sure to wear gloves. But it's very fun because you can use it as you would with typical rope bondage. You can weave it between other things that you're doing, or even if you don't really know any bondage at all, you can just wrap it around a calf really tight and then rub over that. Or if you want to make it more intense, you can stick metal chopsticks in it and then twist it around to really get it to dig down into the skin. So good. Such a fun time. Can you tell I like coconut rope? It's kind of my thing. But even if you don't want to have anything to do with bondage or knots at all, because coconut rope is not actually very good for knots or anything like that at all, you can just take a length of it and just rub it back and forth very quickly over the skin and like double it up. And basically it has the same effect as it being a prickly bath towel. It's quite fun, and it doesn't have to be very complicated if you find bondage to be too intimidating or too restrictive. But also, even pet players can get in on the fun too, right? If you're maybe a pony or a kitten or a puppy, you can use horse or dog grooming gloves as a way to try abrasion play. If you haven't seen one of these before, they are rubber-coated gloves, typically with some kind of texture or pattern on them, like little nubs and cones and spikes to get all the way through fur and hair, and they work very well. I also think they are a pretty close replacement for vampire gloves. And vampire gloves are a tool usually made from leather that goes over your hand, and it has pins in it, and use it for sensation play or for drawing blood. I really think the only advantage of a vampire glove is that it can draw blood more easily. But other than that, I really feel like grooming gloves are a really, really good replacement because they can go to like 0 to 75, whereas vampire gloves are more like 1 to 100, you know? I hope that makes sense. Speaking of that, I do want to mention drawing blood and what you should know about how heavy abrasion play can get, because I've sort of focused on more the light, gentle side of it so far in this video, but the fact is a lot of people do abrasion play because they like it to be really heavy and rough and intense, and they do it because they want to draw blood. And whenever you're going over the same area of the skin over and over and over again with an abrasive surface, there is a risk you are going to break the skin, draw blood, and everything that goes along with that. So you do need to be aware and be prepared. So if you were doing anything even close to medium or greater levels of abrasion play, I think it is a good idea to use prep pads on the areas you want to do play over, be cautious about how cleanly or sanitized your toys are, and have a first aid kit on hand. Of course, I am not a doctor, I am not a medical expert, and this is by no means a whole complete guide to dealing with blood or how to sanitize things or sanitized versus clean or bloodborne pathogens or anything like that you would want to know. So please do more research. But if for some reason the only video you ever see about this is mine, you don't do any further research, and an accident happens, let's talk about one important thing real quick, which is if you are using a porous toy and you use it to break the skin and it gets blood on it, you have to either dispose of that toy or treat it as being what's called blood bonded to that person. I do know some people that will swear by leaving a toy out in direct sunlight, i.e. not behind a window, for a couple of weeks and calling that good enough. I don't have any reports I can share with you from somebody who spread a bloodborne illness through, say, a flogger or a vampire glove, but just because I don't have any stories of that happening doesn't mean it couldn't happen or that you shouldn't be cautious. And also whether or not you can sanitize a toy depends on the material and some other things. And again, not a doctor, not a complete guide, not an expert in that whatsoever. Please, if you think you might or you want to draw blood as part of this kind of play, I am imploring you to do more research. There are resources online, there's online classes, there's in-person classes, those are best, but please do that education and research before you go out and do this willy-nilly at a play party, okay? Okay, good. So with that being said, that is everything I wanted to share today in this video. I would love to know your thoughts about this one in a comment down below. I think this is a really, again, unique area of kink that not very many people get to explore, and I'm curious if you'll get to try it, if you enjoy it, what do you think about it? What do you like about it? Why do you do it? Just let me know everything you're thinking and feeling in a comment down below. Anything you want to add, other ideas or concepts I didn't mention in this video, please also let me know in a comment down below because I love hearing all of your thoughts and ideas. And if you enjoyed this video, if not already, please do subscribe. I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do is Patreon. A link to that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.